beacon had been transmitting for 600 years. We had calibrated it precisely, a narrow-band pulse in the frequency range the Vethari had, used during the seeding period 40,000 years ago. Not a distress signal, not exactly. Something older, a colonial dependency tone, the kind a subject world would emit when it needed its makers. We had found the original template in the archive, reconstructed the carrier wave from fragments of pre-memory preserved in the deep record, and set the transmitter running in the outer system, 11 light hours past the heliopause, where any incoming vessel on the old transit corridor would catch it before catching anything else. We called it the Lure. The people who designed it called it something longer and less polite. I was 43 years old when they assigned me to the Eidolon platform reception team. I had spent the previous 18 years in the Foreign Architecture Division, working translation protocols for species we had encountered beyond the fourth transit ring. Genuine first contacts. Most of them, nothing as old or as loaded as this. My supervisor told me the appointment was an honor. I told her I understood that. What I did not say, because it would have been unprofessional, was that I had grown up in the coastal shelters of the Valdres Prefecture during the last of the Reconstruction years, watching my parents' generation pour their lives into walls that might or might not hold, and that I had spent my entire adult career waiting for the day the architects of that long emergency would walk through a door and find out what we had done with the time they gave us. I did not say that, but I thought it very clearly on the morning the Dominion's lead vessel translated into the system. The Eidolon platform sits at the L2 point, far enough from Earth to offer a clear view of the planet's full face, and near enough that the orbital defense lattice fills the surrounding space, like a second sky. From the translation chamber on the platform's diplomatic tier, the view is deliberate. Earth in the lower portion of the viewport, its megacity sprawl lit from the inside. At the terminator line, the warship hangars on the Kethis platform visible as a cluster of running lights, above the equatorial band, and the first ring of fixed orbital batteries in the near field. Unmistakable if you knew what you were looking at, invisible if you thought you were approaching a quiet colony world in need of assistance. We had kept the shielding on the viewport's outer layer. Standard arrival protocol, we told their liaison officer when he came through the docking collar. A young Vethari, male in a rank sash that suggested junior embassy staff, sent ahead to arrange the meeting. Viewport maintenance, we told him. It would be cleared for the Admiral's arrival. He accepted that. They had no reason not to. Their records listed Earth as a dependence-class settlement, catalogued 40,000 years ago as a seeded genetic resource world, low development index, no transit capability, no independent defense architecture. Their records said the beacon meant we needed them. Their records were extraordinarily thorough and completely wrong, but they did not know that yet. Admiral Verith San arrived in the translation chamber at the 3rd hour of the morning cycle. She was tall by Vethari standards, silver carapaced, the elongated cranial ridge that indicated Reclamation Fleet Command rank. She brought 4 staff officers and a cultural assessment specialist, a small party for what she clearly expected to be a formality. Posture. When she entered the room was the posture of someone who had done this before, the easy bearing of an authority arriving to collect what was owed. I was standing at the near end of the table. My deputy, Counselor Reneth, to my left. 2 translators, no security personnel visible in the room, though there were 12 behind the partition wall if it came to that. The Admiral said, through the translation architecture. Her eyes moved over the room with professional efficiency. She registered the absence of supplication, the absence of formal displays of welcome, the absence of anything she had evidently been briefed to expect from a dependency-class colony species. A small adjustment in her bearing, not alarm, not yet, but attention. We received your signal. We know, I said. That was the intention. Pause. The cultural assessment specialist turned to look at me more carefully. Your world issued a colonial dependency transmission, Admiral Verith San said. On reclamation band frequencies, our records indicate. Your records indicate a great many things, I said. Some of them are even accurate. You did seed this world approximately 40,000 years ago. That part is correct. The dependency class classification is where the record requires some updating. I nodded to Reneth. He touched the control surface on his side of the table. The viewport shielding dropped. I've thought many times about what Admiral Vareth San saw in that moment, and what it must have rearranged inside her understanding of the situation she was in, filled the lower quarter of the viewport. Its megacity continents visible even from L2, a Terminator line, blazing with the output of a civilization that had been building for 40 millennia without interruption. The warship platforms were clearly visible now. The Kethis platform's hangars alone held 412 vessels in the kilometer-length classification, and you could see them from where she was standing because their running lights formed a constellation that had no natural explanation. The fixed orbital batteries of the first defense ring were in the near field, 763 units, and the nearest cluster was close enough that their targeting arrays would have been painting the Dominion's lead vessel since before it docked. The Admiral did not speak for a long time. I did not rush her. Part of what I had been trained to understand about the Veth-Ari command cast was silence under pressure was not evasion. It was the architecture of a mind running a full tactical reassessment. She was not stalling. She was doing what any competent commander does when the engagement geometry changes without warning. She was recalculating from the new ground up. I respected that. It was, in a different form, exactly what Earth had been doing for 40,000 years. The cultural assessment specialist moved to stand beside the Admiral and said something in a rapid secondary register, the translation architecture, rendered only partially. Something about classification error, something about the survey interval, something about the flag on the 6,000-year update. The Admiral cut him off with one short syllable. Then the specialist looked directly at me. None of the Veth-Ari delegation had done until that point. He had the focused, litigious expression of a scholar confronting primary evidence that invalidates an entire theoretical framework. I had seen it before, on colleagues in the Foreign Architecture Division when contact data came back that required a complete revision of a species model. It was, in its way, a generous expression. The face of someone who genuinely loves their field and has just been shown how much more of it there is. How long, he said, has the lattice been operational? The first defensive ring was completed approximately 12,000 years ago, I said. We have added to it since. He turned back to the viewport and said nothing further. The cultural assessment specialist made a sound, a low, involuntary vocalization. I had been briefed that in Veth-Ari physiological terms this indicated a recalibration event, the species-specific response to encountering information that requires immediate structural revision of a held model. I understood the feeling. The beacon? Admiral Vareth San said finally, and her voice had changed register, in a way the translation architecture rendered as flat and very careful, was not a dependency signal. No, I said. It was a colonial dependency signal, technically. We used the original reclamation band carrier wave. We wanted to make certain you would follow it, and that you would follow it here, rather than sending a reconnaissance vessel first. I paused. You came in a formation of 11. Your lead vessel docked. Your remaining 10 are holding position at the outer marker. They are currently within the targeting solution of our third ring batteries, which your sensors may or may not be capable of reading. I want you to have accurate information. She looked at me. The silver carapace at her collar ridge had tightened. Another physiological indicator I had been briefed on. Not fear exactly. Something closer to the tactical assessment a commander runs when the engagement geometry has shifted entirely against them. You set a trap, she said. We prepared a reception, I said. The nature of the race depends on the decisions made in this room. The staff officers behind her had gone very still. The cultural assessment specialist was looking at the viewport with the fixed attention of someone cataloging a threat they had not had a category for until 30 seconds ago. Your records, I continued, listed this world as a resource dependency. A seeded colony, low development, available for reclamation at the Dominion's discretion. We understand why the records say that. Your reclamation division filed the original survey 40,000 years ago and updated it from long range. Observation at intervals of approximately 8,000 years. The last update was 6,300 years ago. At that point, the survey noted early fortification architecture, transit capability to the inner system bodies, and a population estimate that the survey officer apparently found implausible and flagged as a measurement error. I kept my voice even. It was not a measurement error. This is not possible, one of the staff officers said. Not to me, to the admiral. It is precisely possible, I said. It is in fact what happened. You seeded this world 40,000 years ago. We grew, we built, we remembered why you left, and we kept the record, and we waited. I looked at Admiral Vareth-san. The beacon has been transmitting for 600 years. We did not know how long it would take. We knew you would come eventually, because the reclamation fleet operates on a schedule, and we were on the schedule, and we were prepared to wait as long as the schedule required. Vareth-san turned back to the viewport. She looked at the orbital batteries for a long moment. The way a very experienced officer looks at something that has already ended a strategic situation and is now simply present as a fact. What do you want, she said. Nothing from you, I said. We want nothing from the Vethari Dominion. We have not wanted anything from you for a very long time. What we are offering you is a transaction of information. You came here believing this world was yours to reclaim. We want you to leave here knowing it is not, and knowing why, so that this conversation does not need to happen again, with a larger fleet and more complicated consequences. She faced me. The cranial ridge had shifted again. I had been told this indicated something like deliberation, physiological marker of a decision being weighed under pressure. You'll let us leave, she said. We will open the transit corridor in the next half hour, I said. All 11 vessels, you will depart on the heading we provide, which will take you to the transit boundary without passing through any of our defensive installations. This is a courtesy. It is not a permanent condition of the relationship. It is what today looks like. And if we return, I looked at her steadily, then today will have been the better option. A long silence. The lights of the Kethis platform hung in the viewport behind her, like a city in the sky, which was exactly what they were. I want to send a transmission to my fleet, she said. Of course, you'll use our communications array. Standard monitoring applies, but we won't interfere with the content. I paused. Tell them what you found. Tell them accurately. That's all we ask. She held my gaze for a moment longer. Then she turned to her staff and began giving quiet orders in the primary Vethari military register, which the translation architecture rendered as clipped and precise and entire story script of the confidence she had entered with. I stood and waited. Eth stood beside me. The translators did not move. The transmission went out 40 minutes later. We monitored it, as promised, without interfering. It was brief. It contained an accurate description of the orbital defense architecture, the fleet tonnage visible from L2, and a population figure that the fleet's own sensors had presumably confirmed by then. It ended with a recommendation. The Dominion's 10 vessels broke formation and departed within the hour. The Admiral's lead vessel followed 7 minutes after the corridor opened, stood at the viewport, and watched the running lights of the last Vethari vessel diminish into the transit geometry until they were indistinguishable from the background stars. Then I picked up the Fmorg tablet from the table and began completing the contact documentation, species, date, resolution classification, recommended follow-on posture. In the resolution field I wrote, informed departure, no engagement. In the notes field, I wrote what the archive's own records had recorded 40,000 years ago in the Vethari survey log, translated now back through 40 millennia of linguistic drift into something close to its original meaning. Resource class world, early stage, undefended negligible resistance potential. I read it once, then I wrote below it, see attached update. We had been ready for a long time. I had spent my career on the assumption that readiness was the work, and the arrival was just the morning it finally mattered. Standing in the empty translation chamber with the stars returned to their normal arrangement in the viewport. I found, I believed, that more than ever. The work was patient. So were we. That was always going to be enough.